Ladies and gentlemen, gather round, grab your favorite boba tea, and get ready for a story so flashy, so explosive, it needs its own original soundtrack. We're diving into the complete saga of the one and only sound Hashira, the man who redefined style, Tengen Uzui. Imagine, if you will, a young boy not in a typical school, but in a brutal, shadowy ninja clan. This wasn't a fun academy manhwa, this was a tragedy from the start. Our boy Tengen was a solo artist from day one, forced to be a genius in the art of survival. He was like that incredibly talented main character in a webtoon who has immense power but no one to share it with, his heart growing cold in a world of missions and murder. He was destined for a lonely, brutal life. To truly understand the dazzling spectacle that is Tengen Uzui, we must first dim the lights and step away from the main stage. Before the explosive entrances, before the synchronized attacks with his wives, and long before the title of Sound Hashira, there was just a boy in the shadows. This is the origin story, the first arc of our manhwa, and it's far from a glamorous one. Imagine, if you will, the most intense, high-stakes K-drama backstory, but instead of a prestigious school or a corporate empire, our protagonist is born into a ninja clan. This isn't a life of cool, secret missions with fancy gadgets, this is a brutal, unforgiving world where children aren't raised with love, but forged into tools. Think of the most tragic webtoon protagonist you know. A young Tengen wasn't attending a magical academy or training in a dojo with a wise, kind master. His home was a training ground in survival, and his lessons were in assassination. From his earliest memories, his own father was less a parent and more a ruthless drill instructor. The concept of play was alien, his world was one of constant drills, harsh discipline, and a cold, utilitarian philosophy, win at all costs, and do it silently. He was a prodigy, a genius in the deadly arts, but this wasn't a gift. It was a chain. His brilliance was cultivated not for his own fulfillment, but for the clan's dark purposes. He was like a trainee at the most cutthroat entertainment company, forced to master every skill, but instead of singing and dancing, he was mastering the art of taking a life. The pressure was immense, the expectations suffocating, and the price of failure was unthinkable. This is where the core of his loneliness was forged. In a typical shonen story or a team-based manhwa, the hero finds a rival who becomes a friend, or a mentor who offers a guiding hand. For Tengen, there were no allies, only competitors, even within his own family. He had brothers, but they weren't comrades in arms, they were rivals in a deadly game where only the strongest would survive. The bond of brotherhood was twisted into a constant, desperate struggle for supremacy and survival. Every interaction was a test, every glance a calculation. Can you imagine the isolation? To be surrounded by people, by your own flesh and blood, and feel more alone than if you were in an empty room. This profound solitude shaped his entire worldview. He learned to rely on no one but himself. His heart, meant for compassion and connection, was instead encased in the cold steel of a shinobi's creed. The breaking point, the moment that defines every great character, came with a tragedy so profound it shattered the little world he knew. Forced into a fight to the death against his own brothers, Tengen was pushed to his absolute limit. This wasn't a heroic tournament arc, it was a grim, bloody massacre for survival. He emerged as the sole survivor, but this was no victory. It was a damnation. The weight of this act, of being the last one standing in a pile of his kin, could have broken him completely. It was the final, brutal lesson from his father: you are alone. You are a weapon, and weapons do not feel. But here is where our hero's indomitable spirit first flickered to life. Instead of being completely consumed by the darkness, a seed of rebellion was planted. He looked at the bloody legacy of his clan, at the empty, utilitarian existence it demanded, and he said, no. This life was not for him. He made the most difficult choice a person can make. He turned his back on everything he had ever known. He ran away. He didn't have a plan or a destination, he simply had the desperate, burning need to find something more, something real. He was escaping the script he was born into, determined to find his own story. This was his solo debut, not as a shinobi, but as a person seeking his own path. He was no longer the clan's weapon, he was Tengen Uzui, a lone wanderer in a world that was still vast and terrifying, but now held the faint, distant promise of something called light. And it was this lonely, determined journey that would eventually lead him to a new family, a new purpose, and the chance to become the flamboyant, big-hearted hero we all know and love. If the first arc of Tengen Uzui's life was a grim and monochrome tragedy, Then the second act is where the screen explodes with vibrant color and the opening theme song swells with triumphant energy. This is the transformative chapter where the lonely solo artist, accustomed to the silent, crushing weight of his own company, auditions for a band and finds not just backup singers, but a family. His escape from the Shinobi clan was merely the first step. His arrival into the world of the Demon Slayer Corps and his union with Hinatsuru, Makio, and Suma was his true rebirth. Imagine the scene. A young man, hardened by trauma and taught that attachment is a fatal weakness, suddenly finds himself surrounded by people who operate on a completely different frequency. The Demon Slayer Corps, for all its brutality, is built on a foundation of camaraderie and a shared, righteous goal. It's the difference between a ruthless corporation that discards its employees and a found family K-drama squad where everyone has each other's backs. For Tengen, this was a cultural shock. Here were people like Kyojuro Rengoku, whose booming enthusiasm was as genuine as the sun, and others who fought not for a paycheck or out of fear, but for the people they loved. This environment was the fertile ground where the seeds of his new self could finally sprout. But the true catalyst, the central plot device that rewrote his entire character, was the formation of his own personal squad, his 3 wives. Now, let's be clear, from a narrative standpoint, this isn't just a romantic subplot. This is a strategic, emotional, and spiritual masterstroke. Think of it not as a harem, but as the formation of the ultimate K-pop group or a powerhouse action team in a manhwa. Hinatsuru, the calm and strategic center, Makio, the fiery and fiercely competitive brawler, and Suma, the emotionally expressive and unexpectedly resilient one. Together, they formed a perfect, balanced unit. Tengen was no longer a one-man army, he was the leader of a synchronized, highly specialized team. This is where he learned the language of teamwork. His entire life, mission success, was a solitary metric: complete the objective and survive. Now, it was about coordination, communication, and trust. His musical score technique is the perfect metaphor for this transformation. It's not a solo performance, it's a complex symphony. He learned to read the rhythm of battle not just in his enemies, but in his partners. He had to listen, to adapt, and to protect. The man who was taught to let others die for the mission was now willingly putting his own body on the line to ensure his wives' safety. Every joint mission, every coordinated attack, was another lesson in a new way of living. The love and loyalty of his wives did something profound. It gave him permission to be flamboyant. His flashiness isn't just a personality quirk, it's a defiant rejection of his past. The shinobi world demanded silence, shadows, and bland utility. Tengen Uzui, the free man, declares the opposite. He is loud, he is sparkly, he is unapologetically extra. This is his way of screaming to the world, I am not that person anymore. His wives don't just tolerate this, they celebrate it. They are his dedicated fan club, his managers, and his fellow performers on the stage of life. They created a home that was warm, loud, and full of affection, the exact opposite of the cold, silent compound of his youth. This newfound bond became his ultimate power source. The strength of a Hashira is one thing, but the strength of a man fighting for his family is something else entirely. It's a classic trope in our favorite stories. The hero finds a reason to fight that is bigger than duty or revenge. For Tengen, that reason was now threefold. They were his reason to come home, his reason to fight smarter, and his reason to survive. He was no longer just surviving, he was building a life, a legacy of love and noise, meticulously constructed over the silent, bloody ruins of his past. The solo act was over. The main event, with his full squad by his side, was just beginning. Every great story needs its epic, climactic battle, the moment where the hero is pushed to his absolute limit and must dig deeper than ever before. For Tengen Uzui, the entertainment district arc was not just another mission, it was his brutal, bloody, and ultimate world tour finale. This was the concert where the pyrotechnics were real explosions, the choreography was a deadly dance with death, and the price of a missed cue was the annihilation of everything he held dear. Imagine the stage is set, the opulent, neon-lit entertainment district, a place of false glitter and hidden demons. Tengen enters not just as a Hashira, but as the ringmaster of his own high-stakes operation, with his wives already embedded deep undercover. But the script flips horrifically. The villains, the Upper Moon 6 duo Gyutaro and Daki, aren't just powerful bosses, they are a twisted, symbiotic reflection of Tengen's own found family. Where he and his wives operate on trust and love, this demonic pair is bound by codependency and shared poison. This immediately raises the stakes, turning the fight into a brutal ideological war. It's his family's bond versus their monstrous connection. In the battle itself, this is where the musical score truly becomes a desperate symphony. The fight isn't a clean, honorable duel, it's a messy, chaotic, and vicious brawl. Tengen, the master of flash and sound, is pushed into the dirt. His lungs are shredded by poison, his body is battered and bleeding. This is the moment the glamorous idol is stripped of his makeup under the harsh, unforgiving stage lights. The flashiness is gone, replaced by raw, gritty survival. He's not just fighting to win, he's fighting to buy seconds, to create an opening for his new, inexperienced bandmates, Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke, to step in. This is where his transformation from a solo star to a squad leader becomes absolute. In his past, he would have seen his junior comrades as liabilities. Now, he orchestrates the entire battle around their strengths. He becomes the conductor of a life-or-death orchestra, reading the score of the demons, movements and directing his ragtag team of slayers to hit the right notes at the crucial moment. The climax, where he loses his hand to save Tanjiro, is the ultimate sacrifice a performer can make. He literally sacrifices a part of his instrument, his ability to wield his dual cleavers with his signature flair, to protect a member of his team. His triumphant roar, "I'm still flashy and I'm still alive," as he unleashes his final technique with one hand, is the most powerful line of the entire concert. It's not a boast of untouched power, it's a defiant declaration from a battered warrior. It screams that even broken, even bleeding out, his spirit, forged in loneliness and tempered by the love of his family, is unbreakable. He won not by being the most powerful, but by being the most resilient, the most resourceful, and the most willing to sacrifice his own glory for the sake of the team's victory. The stage was left in ruins, but the star, though forever changed, had delivered the performance of a lifetime. In so many of the stories we love, the final curtain falls the moment the villain is defeated. The hero stands triumphant, the screen freezes, and the credits roll to a triumphant song. But what happens after the battle is won? For Tengen Uzui, the true victory wasn't just in surviving the epic showdown with Upper Six, it was in the beautiful, peaceful, and profoundly ordinary life that followed. This is the happy ending, epilogue that so many heroes are denied, the quiet encore that is often more meaningful than the explosive finale. Imagine the scene. The adrenaline has faded, the bandages are applied, and the roar of the crowd is replaced by the silence of recovery. For a man like Tengen, a warrior whose entire identity was built on being the flashiest, most powerful combatant, the loss of a hand and an eye could have been a fate worse than death. It could have been a tragic ending, the star forced into a bitter and resentful retirement. But Tengen's story subverts this trope in the most beautiful way. He doesn't see his retirement as a defeat or a limitation. Instead, he reframes it as a promotion to a higher calling. His new mission, to be the dazzling, loving patriarch of the family he fought so desperately to protect. His home is no longer a battlefield or a wisteria house, but a vibrant, lively space filled with the sounds of his wife's voices, laughter, and the simple, profound peace of a day without demons. This is his well-earned curtain call. The man who once commanded the stage with earth-shattering explosions now finds his thrill in domestic bliss. He traded the score of a fighting demon for the rhythm of a household, the musical score of a happy life. The explosions that once defined him are now the fireworks he enjoys during a summer festival, his 3 wives by his side, their happiness a brighter, more satisfying spectacle than any battle could ever be. This is the ultimate power fantasy in a world of super-powered battles, the fantasy of peace. Tengen Uzui, the man who had known nothing but violence from childhood, finally got to experience what it means to simply live. He got to wake up without fear, to eat meals without urgency, and to love without the constant shadow of impending loss. He became a living testament to the idea that survival is its own victory. In a narrative genre where sacrifice is often final, Tengen's legacy is a powerful statement. The goal isn't just to win the war, it's to live long enough to enjoy the peace you bled for. His story doesn't end with a heroic death, but with a heroic life. He became a legend not just for how he fought, but for what he fought for, and the fact that he got to enjoy every single second of it. The flashy Hashira retired, but Tengen Uzui, the man, the husband, the survivor, found his greatest and most flamboyant role yet, a life of glorious, well-deserved, and utterly captivating peace.